John Batsford, Head of Industry at Google, and this is Executive Leadership Through Change. Really excited today with the Google Executive Fireside Chat. Michael Flores, CMO of EducationDynamics, is here.
Hey, Don, good morning.
So if we could just kick it off, if you could share your CV, a little bit about your background and how you got to the position you have today.
Sure. So I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at EducationDynamics, like you noted. I've been at EducationDynamics since about 2011. I joined the company as the Director of Search. So since then, I took a number of different roles with escalating responsibility, taking over multiple divisions, but starting in search. Prior to EducationDynamics, I worked largely in search, both on the organic side and on the paid side. And I think some people probably know, back in, I think, 2009, I wrote a book for John Wiley & Sons called, I co-wrote, I should say, a book called PPC An Hour a Day for their Cybex division. So
you literally wrote the book on the topic.
I literally wrote at least one chapter of the book that made it through the editing, but I contributed, I think, to more than that. But hey, if you can't get enough of me after this video and you want to hear more about what I have to say, search, there's a heck of a chapter on the GDN, not the GDA back then, the GDN that I did back in 2009.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, it's a great resume, and appreciate your perspective, not only for your current role, but then also things you've done previously. You've gotten to see the evolution of products such as AdWords and I think digital marketing overall. So 2 topics outside of just your background. There's the people in leadership, and then there's the top level kind of future of marketing. So from people in leadership, one of the questions that's top of mind is the last few months. I mean, we can't ignore how dramatic the changes have been, from shifts in the modality of learning, but also then the workplace. So what are some of the things that are top of mind for you as a business leader, and just would love your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think that there's probably, in the last 6 months or so, 3 big things that I'd say that are fundamentally different than how a lot of us have been doing business for however many years, right? The biggest one is the pandemic, right? So I'm sure we'll talk about that and how that's affected folks and how they manage teams and how they manage offices even. But then there's 2 other ones. One of them is there's an election coming up, and individual politics aside, the outcome of that election is very likely to affect the policies that govern my industry that Google works in, and online marketing in general. Anything from disclosures on advertising to anything down past that. And the third one, which I think we can't forget about, because I think maybe 1-2 months ago was a really big thing, I think in a short term even bigger than impacts from the pandemic, was the civil unrest that's given rise to protests around the country. While that hasn't directly had an impact on the industry that I'm in, the business that we're in, it has certainly done things like impact our search volume, right? So on certain days, something happens in the news, people are just concentrated on things other than looking for the solutions that we provide, right? So that can have a negative impact on our business, outside of the negative impact it's having on our country. You just look around, even the NBA is not immune to this right now. So it's a thing.
Okay. So with those in mind, those all very dramatic pillars of change that have happened over the last year, what's your company and your personal approach? Are there pivots that you've made? Are there shifts that you've taken? Any thoughts to maybe somebody else who's in the same position, and what your peer set might be thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So at EducationDynamics, we did this thing which was kind of internally dubbed a listening tour. So this was an activity that was led by our executive team, not even in partnership with our human resources team, but really led by our executive team, where I went in and other people who are on our executive team went in and had sessions where people who reported up through our chains, like could have maybe half an hour or something to speak with us and just give us an impression of what was going on in their heads and going on in their lives. For me personally, I did maybe, I think, 5 sessions. The contact centers report up through me through, multiple folks. So, agents who are normally on the phone were able to kind of give voice to the things that were going on in their heads. And it's actually helped us to shape our policy going forward and how we're treating all this stuff, right? So at the time, the catalyzing event was the civil unrest, but this is during a pandemic, and it allowed us to have a different point of view on things like people homeschooling their kids, or, you maybe from a management standpoint, somebody is telling somebody, you need to be more focused on your tasks, or I see you have these distractions and it's impacting your performance at X time period. Well, what does it mean when your distraction is your child, right? And that daycares where you live are not open, right? So we kind of had to soften our position on some things and said, hey, we're just living in a different situation than our normal situation, and we have to make allotments for this kind of thing, maybe flex some hours, a bunch of different stuff like that. And then separately, we just issued mental health days. So we kind of made people take vacation in July and August. So we gave them incremental time, said you had to take it during July or August. So you couldn't bank it. So I don't know, there's people like me who have too much in the bank that they take it away. They're like, this is a liability on the company's balance sheet. So if you're not going to take your vacation, that's bad on you. So we said, hey, here's an extra PTO day or so. You're using it before the end of next week. So we did that, and that was extremely well received, I'm sure you can imagine.
It's wonderful. Well, as a father of 4, I appreciate you thinking about people who have lots of moving parts, especially recently, but also I think those days to recharge, I think those are important, not only just for the user, but also for the company. I think it's a great reset button for everyone. So I know that as an employee of a company, I do appreciate it. So when you're thinking about the future of remote work, I think that naturally segues into the future of what the marketing role will be. And one of the things that I'm really interested in is what your thoughts are, or what you're seeing as far as what does marketing look like. So we could talk about marketing in the next 6 months. We could talk about it in the next 12 months. And we could also think about it in the very long term. And over that time, I think the main theme is, what's the core value proposition of a marketing professional for yourself and for those you're going to hire? And maybe you could just kind of paint a picture of your approach for as we move forward and as things change.
So I think that what we've experienced in the short term, the last couple of months, is not different than what I would think of as, my macro thoughts on how to conduct online marketing. It's just a specific application of those things. So the thing that I think is the most important is, what I would broadly talk about as rigor, that we kind of know the thing that we're trying to do. We can predict the outcomes based on facts and data, and that we're nimble around those things based on incoming new facts and data, right? So I think that's kind of the broad way that I would approach marketing. And I would joke this, it's not literally true. You think of maybe two broad piles, like one of them is creative and one of them is like nerdy math. And you think of marketing as being on the creative side. And I'm like, well, no, it's much more on the nerdy math side if you want to do a great job with it.
So there's a interesting bit there I'd like to unpack. So you mentioned the creative function, you mentioned the kind of quantitative aspect of that, and one of the things,
nerdy math.
You did call it nerdy math. I'm calling it the quantitative part, yep. But both work. I think one of the things that is interesting is that over time, just raw number processing, the kind of addition, subtraction, division, and that pattern recognition is increasingly automated. And I know that you've led on automating much of the raw division that many BD buyers do. One of the questions, though, I think is what is the role in a future organization? Because my belief is that organizations will still have the same amount of employees. They will be doing different things increasingly. So you mentioned that insight of word order or being empathetic of the current situation. Thoughts about how marketers can get better about understanding their clients, thoughts about who you should hire. You said, we'll take a new graduate and we'll train them up. Has that process been developed over time? Anything there would be wonderful.
Sure. So there are, I think, broadly speaking, two kinds of tasks that you do in marketing. One of them is the tasks that machines do better than people. And the other ones are the tasks that machines can't currently do. Right? So I have always been of the mind that people should not even do the things that machines do better than people. I don't know if you've ever gotten an out of office reply from me. It's like, I'm a robot. Don't get mad at me. Michael's not in the office. It's like, so it says something like this. So things like bidding, for example, I've literally never tried to train people to do bidding by hand, right? So I used to do bidding by hand. I think you probably used to do bidding by hand. We didn't have these fancy robots back then bidding. Like, you can't do the bidding as well as the robot, right? Like, what are you going to do? You check your conversions and the auction stuff every day and make a spreadsheet and then readjust all of your bids on a keyword level, like, I don't know, every day. I mean, you could have thousands or even millions of keywords. That's not an efficient use of time in the context that we're in. So what I've taught people to do is a thing that, at least by context, robots can't do or can't do very well right now, which is to understand how much we should spend for something, not based on just like what the auction numbers are or what we think an acceptable cost per lead is, but more on like, okay, we need to fulfill for this client. This is client strategic to us. Can we take less of a margin? Should we try to get more of a margin? What is the what is the total outcome of this lead in terms of its efficacy for a client, and how do we position it in our thought process? And then we just assign in a number to that, and then let the machine figure out what the right route is from the auction to getting to that number. So separately, the thing that I would always say, and I think it's easiest to translate this into Google Ads search terms, which is not search terms like a keyword, but search terms like just the things that we would talk about. I think broadly speaking, you have click-through rate and you have a max bid and you have some other sort of relevancy factors, right? Humans are really good at the relevancy factors and the click-through rate if they understand both what the intent of a searcher is and kind of empathy towards the search engine. So like the search engine likes searchers to click things, right? Now you can write things that will make people click things. Like here's something that's free. Or here's a lurid thing. Here's like some, I don't know, tons of free candy bars. Maybe people will click here and you get free candy bars. That's not good for our business. That's not a good source of click-through rate, right? So if you understand what somebody wants, you understand the intent behind the words that they use, not just the words that they use, then you can write ads that harmonize with kind of what the search engine wants, which is to generate clicks. You satisfy the end customer, and then maybe you get a benefit on the CPC. And the other thing is you have to understand what the correct max bid is. I have a very strong feeling around this, and it's usually not sort of internal company centric. Like whatever we're doing exists in an ecosystem, and most of what those numbers are dictated by are what everybody else is doing.
I've heard you say this expression before, that A+ marketing is bulletproof. I think we said this a couple weeks ago. You see marketing, I think, as a something that's self-funding, right? Your role is a net profit center.
Yes. So absolutely. I read something recently where someone had said, I think in a LinkedIn article or in an interview, when you're in a situation like we're in with the pandemic, marketing is one of the first areas that could get cut. Like that is the opposite of how I would approach something. If you have rigor, fact-based, data-driven marketing, you can show like for every dollar that you put into the marketing, you get, let's say $1. Like I'm not even saying get $2 or $5. You get $1, right? If that's the case, then nobody ever takes your dollar away because they just lost money by taking that dollar away. Oh, I don't want to deploy that dollar. Well, if you get $1 back, just give them that dollar an infinite number of times. It doesn't matter whether they're getting a penny back or $5 back. You get to the same, it's ultimately the same terminal point, and it's just something that you want to do over and over and over again as a rule.
You were talking about what it means to be in the 1% best marketers, what an A+ marketer is. And I was trying to take a swing at, say, almost a half dozen things that I think you've mentioned during our conversation. You highlighted the need to know data integration several times. You need to know what results your marketing is driving and measurement. So would you agree that if we're just to bang off some tips, that data integration is an important one? Then I have automation. You said there are things that machines will just do better. I had machine learning as number 2. I had number 3 from our conversation. You mentioned if you spend $1 and it makes $1, that's profit. I would say that's a pretty complicated conversation to have with many CFOs, to have that alignment towards profit maximization. You have empathy to users, understanding the intent and the flow. And then last of these 5 that I have here is you have tech prowess, training, understanding the engine, the elements that really go into it, and having your marketers be the best.
I would say one of the things that is distinguishing about, at least how I've tried to have my teams be built, is the most junior people on our team have a deep understanding of what the macro sort of financial returns are for their entire division. Like they know how much their part of the business made yesterday. Forget about how much they made over the course of a month. You just add up all the days, and so much they made a month. They understand on a personal level oftentimes. So depending on how junior they are, like whether they're buying, whether they're just doing reporting and stuff like that, what their contribution to that performance for their team is, right? So we kind of try to get them in early to have this in their bones, so that as they progress in the organization, that they teach that to the next person who's going to be junior to them when they get to be a manager, stuff like that. At the same time, they have ownership and hopefully a little pride in the contribution they're making to the organization. And, tied, I think, with that, for every $1 I spend, I get $1 back sort of philosophy. But they understand that what they're doing is not just important to kind of the liquidity or the everyday business flow of the business, but like that money is paying it's paying their salary, it's paying everybody's salary. So all of those things are very closely aligned.
Michael, huge thank you for you being here today. Appreciate it. Really value your insight, and also as a partner. And I think that we've got a chance to dig in a lot today. But thanks for your time.
Great. Thank you for having me, Don.